everybody. Welcome to Learning the Scottish Great Highland Bagpipe with me, J.D. Ingram, pipe major of the Charleston Pipe Band. This week we're going to be learning
Lesson 19, Scotland the Brave. Your goal is to be able to play the entirety of Scotland the Brave at a steady tempo with correct use of embellishments. We'll focus on good execution and expression. We'll try playing all of Scotland the Brave. Your homework is to memorize Scotland the Brave. As a reminder, here's the new tune checklist. Remember to verify the time signature, the idiom or the required tempo. I'll give you a hint, this one's also going to be a march. The points in the tune that have crossing noise risks, the embellishments that we need to watch out for, and the roadmap of the tune. For Scotland the Brave, this is a common 4/4 march, meaning the parts will be 4 beats per bar. There will still be 2 bars per phrase, 2 phrases per line, and 2 lines per part, but the parts will not be repeated. Otherwise, it should feel fairly similar to High Road to Gairloch, The Brown-Haired Maiden, and Mary's Wedding. As before, we're going to try to focus on good expression of our dots and cuts. Here's the sheet music to Scotland the Brave. Be aware there are a couple different settings out there. The biggest difference tends to be in line 3. So if your line 3 does not look anything like mine, it will be good for you to go ahead and print this one off. Otherwise, a couple different grace notes or embellishments here or there isn't too big of a deal.
Okay, Scotland the Brave, here we go. This is a big tune. It's really commonly played all around the world on bagpipes. If you're not familiar with the tune, I've heard, and I'm not 100% certain, but the tune may date back to the 1800s or so. It was starting to get popular by the early 1900s, and the words were actually not written to it, words that you might have heard sung at festivals or whatever. They didn't come around until I want to say the 1950s, which makes this, in a bagpiping sense, a fairly young tune. The tune got really popular in the 50s and 60s and 70s, and it's basically become a standard in bagpipe bands everywhere. So let's just talk and sing and clap through it first. The first 2 bars, you'll notice it's a pretty easy phrase. You got a twirloa and a grip, but other than that, it's fairly standard stuff. It's also nice that phrase is identical to the one below it, and the same phrase on the last line are all identical. We've got a B phrase that is a little different in the second half of the first line. Check out the last beat of the first line's got 4 16th notes in a row, so that'll be a tough spot. Be ready for that. The rest of it's fairly straightforward. I don't, looking at it from a distance, you don't see a lot of ink on the page, which is usually a spot to watch out for. So I'm going to try clapping through it, whole thing. I'm going to set my metronome at 75 beats a minute. Here we go. And I'm going to start on that first low A for clapping. So 1, 2, ready, play. Dum bum ba dee dum ba da dee 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 da da dum bum dee da da dee da dum bum ba ba be ba da 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 dun dun da dee dun da dun dee 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 da da dum da dee ba da dee da dum be dum da dum dee 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 da da dum dee 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 da 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 dee dee da da dee da dum dee da 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 dum dum ba dee dum ba dum beam beam dee da da dum bum dee ba da dee da dum dee dum be dum. That's how the song goes. Fairly straightforward. Let's zoom in next and look at the tough spots. All right.
Here I've circled all of the spots where I think there's a pretty big risk of a crossing noise. Notice most of them are hand-to-hand crossings. We start with C to E, and then we also have some high A to E crossings where it's dangerous if you don't pick up that ring finger, assuming you're playing your high A correctly, and you drop the other 3 fingers too quickly, you get a low A sound between the high A and the E. After that, we've got D to F, or F to D rather, that's a hand-to-hand crossing. C to E is a hand-to-hand crossing. E to D, hand-to-hand crossing. That finishes the first line. The second line, the first 4 are identical to the line above it. The last one is C to E again. You've got high A to E a couple times in the third line. C to E, E to D, finishing out the third line, and line 4 and line 2 are identical, so the exact same risks other than the very last note.
All right, let's try those crossing noise spots. So probably the 2 most common ones are C to E and high A to E. So that C to E is usually after a C doubling, we go. Remember, to avoid that big lift drop crossing noise, you want to lift before you drop, not the other way around. Not, right? That's how we avoid that big fat low A sound. And you can practice controlling it if you find yourself making that sound commonly. Finally. Or you can just practice going back and forth with the siren exercise. All right, back and forth. The next most common one is the high A to E, and that risk is not picking up that ring finger enough, so dropping before you lift again. You're actually going to want to very slightly get that ring finger up first. So again, you can practice controlling it. Or just the siren exercise. You can do the F to D and E to D. That's in bar 3 and in bar 4. That's actually a good one to practice as a big chunk because you've got it's a run down the scale, which is simple enough, but when it's going that fast, that's a good one to practice, is starting on that E and then F all the way down the scale to low A with your grace notes happening on E and low A. The rest of the tune doesn't have anything that we haven't already seen. There's another E to D, more C to E, and high A to E. So work on those, master those. No crossing noises. Crossing noises are the worst. All right, keep up the good work.
Here I've put a star on all of the embellishments in the tune, and I've color-coded them a little bit for you. So we start each line with a red star marking the torluas, except for line 3, which does not start with a torlua. In the middle of each line, we've got a grip, and also the end of lines 1, 2, and 4. We've got a grip. Those are in the orange stars because grips and torluas are pretty similar. The last of the heavy embellishments in lines 1, 2, and 4 also are our D throws with yellow stars. And then all of our doublings are in various blue shades. Doubling followed by an E grace note. Remember, that's a tarragon. Those are in the dark blue. We've got one of those in almost every bar of the tune, except line 3 is fairly devoid of tarragons. And the light blue are doublings that are not followed by an E grace note, so regular doublings. And you've got 1 or 2 in between each other embellishment. This is a fairly doubling heavy tune. So watch out for those, but notice the repeating patterns, how lines 1, 2, and 4 are very similar. And line 3 has more grips and more doublings, but no D throws or torluas.
All right, let's practice a couple of those embellishments. We've got the Torlua, which is our newest embellishment. Starts the tune. I think we practiced that exact same thing when we learned the Torlua, so that should hopefully be already in your muscle memory. And watch that G to E grace note pattern. G grace note to the low A, close, D grace note, still closed, E grace note back to low A. We've got tarragons and other doublings. Lots of C doublings in there. Grip from high A to high A. Good 2 low G sounds in there. None of this should feel super awkward because we've been practicing tarragons since High Road to Gairloch or before. We've been practicing grips since Mary's Wedding or before. The Torlua is really the only new thing. Looking else, we've got a D throw, and the D throw is on a quarter note, and then you've got a dotted eighth note F. This is a spot where people tend to rush, so watch out for that. We'll go. We're coming from low A. People, a lot of times they'll go, and they're really early before they get to that C doubling. So watch out for that. And that's really it for the whole first part. Second part, we've got high grip to high A again, got another tarragon. We do run into some weird stuff in the last half of the third line. So this goes nice and slow. Got that thumb grace note from G to F, where you're going to actually take your whole hand off and then pinch real quick. So watch out for that. That's a dangerous spot. And that happens twice in a row. Then we go back to high A and we've got this shake from high A to G. So this is high A, tension up real quick. And then a doubling, another doubling, and the rest of it's just the scale. And the rest of it's fairly straightforward. Practice those Torluas, practice the grips. The last bar, the ending phrase of lines 1, 2, and 4. We've got a grip from A to B. Don't think we've seen that in context yet. So that is practice that. That ends the first line. You got to be ready for that because that comes before the beat and ends on the beat, up with a nice clean up to B with no rolling crossing noise there. You don't want to go. Alright, watch out for that intermediate rolling noise. And I do believe that is it. So work on those, master those embellishments, the tough spots, that run down the scale, your line 3, the thumb grace notes and the shake to G, grips, Torluas, all of it. All right, we'll try the whole tune next.
Last but not least, here is the road map of the tune. Notice the A phrase, the theme phrase of the first part is the first half of lines 1, 2, and 4. I've used red to highlight that phrase, and I've used orange to highlight the first half of line 3. If you notice, bar 1 of line 3 is identical to bar 2 of the red phrase, and bar 2 of line 3 is quite similar, except for one note, to that same bar. So that's a fairly, if you master that first phrase, you've pretty much mastered half the tune. Then we've got the blue phrases. You've got the light blue phrase in line 1, which starts with the D throw, and that first bar all the way up to the grip to B is identical to the dark blue phrase, if you look below it. Where they differ is the last 3 beats of that phrase. So the light blue phrase goes to E and then has this really quick run down the scale. The dark blue phrase, which occurs in lines 2 and 4, has after the grip to B you have low A, B, and then another low A. And despite the fact that the last note is different in those, I've highlighted them the same because in line 2 that C doubling and E really act as a pickup note to the second part. If you were to end the tune after one part, you would not play those notes. You would finish it exactly as line 4 is written. And then our one really unique phrase is the green phrase in line 3. It starts with the high A doubling and eventually works its way down the scale to B.
All right, so we just talked our way through the tune. It's nice because the tune basically only has 3 real musical thoughts. You've got this theme phrase, you've got the answer phrase. The first time you do the answer phrase, you end it with this run down the scale. You've got the theme phrase again, you've got an answer phrase, but this time we just go with that little ending grip to B, A, B, A. We've got a new theme phrase, which is really just the second half of the original theme phrase twice. We've got the only new original musical thought, which is this high A, G, high A, some thumb grace notes, and then a run down the scale slowly. We've got the original theme phrase and the original ending phrase, so it's fairly straightforward. I'm going to go ahead and set my metronome to, let's do it at 55 to learn it, and then I'll do it again up tempo and as an example. So here we go. This time I'm going to start with a quarter note E as a pickup to the tune. I'll start with 3 and then that E will be on 4. Ready? 1, 2, 3. So that's the tune at a fairly standard tempo. You might want to practice it slower than that first to master chunks, and then you can play along with that section of the video at 55 beats a minute. When we are on parade, we tend to play that tune more like 75 to 80 beats a minute. So I'm going to play it at 80. This is nice up-tempo version. Same intro, 3 beats, then a quarter note E. 1, 2, 3. So that's how that goes. Whew. Circular breathing got my heart rate up. The one comment I want to make about it, I realized playing it slow and then playing it fast, there's a little nuance in how you express the last beat of last beat of the first line. Is that perfectly round? Or is it dot and cut? I like to do it personally with a very relaxed dot and cut. It's almost round, but not quite. Way rounder than you would do if it was a traditional Scottish dot cut, where we tend to over-exaggerate dots and cuts. But that's just something to think about, be prepared for. You can practice it both ways. For solo performances, you can kind of do what works for you. For band performances, ask your pipe major and figure out what they like and do it the same as everybody else. Assuming, of course, they're playing this setting at all. And that's the tune. So keep up the good work, guys. Practice this tune. Make sure all of our good habits, no crossing noises, good embellishments, steady tempos, all that. All right. Good job.
All right, final thoughts. With this lesson, we're not really learning any new skills. What we are doing is learning to apply lessons that we've been going over for the last however many weeks, and we are trying to really start to make traditional Scottish music. So just keep in mind everything we've learned. The big ones are going to be having clean note transitions with no crossing noises, having clean and rhythmic embellishments that occur at the correct point in relation to the music, having good dot and cut expression, good long held notes and short notes, and trying to keep a steady tempo by practicing with a metronome and tapping your foot. Cheers, guys. Keep up the good work.